Welcome back to Two Vintage Sports Guys, just talking stuff. My name is Joe Randacci, and I will be one of your two hosts for this podcast, kicking it over to you.
Hey, this is Paul Gallagher, and here in Atlanta, the box of cards of hockey and baseball. I've got basketball on the TV. The Phillies just beat the Blue Jays. Life's good.
Spring training, nobody cares right now.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, it's actually meaningless, spring training.
All
But the
right,
World
so
Baseball Classic wasn't. So, how about that?
how about that? Once again, the U.S. is always the bridesmaid, never the bride. After Ohtani struck out Trout 3 years ago to end that epic script-written game, this wasn't as interesting as that. But what's your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, it only got exciting because the Bryce Harper showed up in the ninth inning, and it was a boring game other than that. But it's just great to be back in baseball. Spring training starting. I got to see a lot of players that I normally wouldn't know, trying to figure out which teams they're on, and Venezuela and Japan and all kinds of. It was fun to watch. It was 10 million times better than spring training. I mean, spring training doesn't matter. Football preseason doesn't matter. All this preseason stuff needs to change, and it sounds like it might in a couple of sports. But it was a great way to get back into it. So now we're kind
What
of
was
fired
what,
up
what
and
did you
getting
think
ready.
was the biggest surprise coming out of it that either you weren't expecting something from or were expecting something from and didn't get?
Yeah, I mean the easy answer there, the layup is Venezuela coming in, beating Japan, right? I think beat America. Um, Japan didn't come through, which would have been a nice classic, as you say, to see Shohei versus the Americans would have been a nice one. But just some players, also players that because of insurance or because their teams didn't want them to play, didn't come out in the ninth inning. There was a pitcher who the Padres wouldn't let pitch because they only wanted him in certain situations. So the it was a short leash for some players. So difficult to manage, difficult to understand as a fan when money gets involved like it always does. But that was, I think, one of the more disappointing parts of it is I think Puerto Rico lost three or four players because they couldn't play, and then you're questioning the manager on moves that he's making based on what he's allowed to make from the major league team. So
Well, I think like the Olympics or any of these international competitions, there are just teams that are not going to send their best players depending on age, contract, or to your point, whatever. And I know me being a Met fan, you being in your Phillies gear there, I know Harper, Bryce Harper made a comment kind of about my rookie pitching phenom, Nolan McLean, lost both his starts. And then there was a comment that, well, you didn't score any runs for him. He gave up 2 runs and 3 runs in his 2 losses, but it was a 2-0 and 3-0 game because Judge is high-fiving everybody in the dugout, but he like struck out 5 times.
oh, it's like a Phillies playoff game, right? We lose 2-0, 3-0 all the time. You think Bryce Harper would be used to that, but yeah, I mean a clutch moment for him. He did come through. Judge gets prodded for not coming through. I think Schwarber had a great. So from a Phillies perspective, you had Schwarber and you had Harper. Schwarber had a great series. So what I wonder is, will it transfer into the new year? Did these guys get their competitive juices up? April, I think what's the saying? You never win the pennant in April, but you can lose it.
So with this World Baseball Classic, from a baseball cards standpoint, what did you see coming out? What Topps put out for that?
Yeah, so I think Topps put out a WBC collection. I didn't look at it or get it, but I think the bigger question is how does it affect prices? How does any event affect prices? Whether it's college basketball for the rookies coming out, whether it's a performance in the playoffs for football, this WBC, we had some clutch Venezuelan players. Acuna, does Acuna's stock go up just on this? I think that's the most interesting thing is when you have performances on stage in a special event, and how does that hurt or help their values? I think you're looking at plus 10, 20, maybe even 30% up or down values. So, you know, a Harper
So
coming through with a home run, might keep him even instead of losing 20% of his value. So I couldn't point to one particular guy coming out of that WBC, but I do think overall the impact would be learning players that you had no idea who they were.
at that point, we'll wait and see. But if we're looking back at the WBC cards from the 2023-2024 market, it looks like, and I'll definitely hack this name, the 2023 Bowman Chrome Munetaka Murakami.
Yeah,
God knows how bad I hacked that.
Yeah, that's
Their
bad.
their flag variation super card listed for $100,000. And then
I
it
don't.
looks like the 2023 Topps Shohei Ohtani WBC Purple Parallel at a PSA of 10, listed around 12,300, and was marketed as the holy grail of that tournament. So
Yeah.
there was some bucks that came out of it around Shohei and his countrymen there.
Had a conversation yesterday with somebody and said, baseball's boring. And yes, it can be. But how does a World Baseball Classic bring young fans back into the sport, and then that adult or that kid go back in and actually look at some cards and follow some players? And yes, the investment in that card will go up. The value in that card will go up. But that's an organic thing coming from the collector, and not so much looking at as a dollar value first and then what to collect.
Yeah,
I'll get
yeah,
off
yeah,
my
yeah.
stump.
And to that point, this year, out of nowhere, came my Italians out of
Yeah,
nowhere.
that's the guy. Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. That's
Right.
the
So
guy,
my
the Italian
Italians all
guy.
of a
Yeah.
sudden are on an unbeaten streak, almost going to the finals, derailed by Venezuela. And then when you
Yeah.
start looking at the roster, of course, you're going to see a handful of the MLB players, but there were also some top, prospects
Yeah.
from the Italy League,
Yeah,
right?
you're absolutely, it wasn't Canada, it was Italy. I mentioned Canada before. I forget what the guy's name is, but he's a stud. Everybody's going to be looking him up now. Who's this
Yeah,
guy? It wasn't
yeah. And
Caglione, but it was somebody else. It
yes,
was
it was
really good.
well, it obviously ended in a vowel because we're all the Italians,
Yeah,
but
right. Exactly.
yeah, the big
Yeah.
guy, and I can't think of his name, and I
Yeah,
think it's
yeah, yeah. That's it though.
Paglione or something like that. But yeah, Italians played well. So now, do you actually launch enough people in Italy and around the world that now take an
Ooh,
interest in
there you
baseball
go.
that may have not because they were on the world stage, right? So
There you
you
go.
showed some action there. You
Yep.
may see some action with the cards for those players. And just to jump on for a quick word with the digital card content, MLB The Show by that drops on PlayStation and Xbox came out on the 17th, and that's the biggest game in baseball for 2 decades. And the Diamond Dynasty on there, which is what everybody plays and buys their cards with coins. It's interesting because they sell the basic set game every year and they sell the deluxe set. You actually pay more cash to buy a set that gives you digital currency and a shot at some premium cards so you could build your collection. And you'll find out by the end of a season, there are people that drop like 5 figures in in virtual currency to buy cards for the game that will then be, defunct after the season ends and the next game comes out next year.
You're in a
But
whole
the
nother world, brother. I
yeah,
don't
but
understand any of what you just said.
well, but there are plenty
Nothing.
of people out there half our age that do, and the NBTs. You remember the
Yeah,
that came out a few years ago?
yeah.
That's what people would sell a character or a card for somebody else to use in a game, and they would
Yep.
sell it for 5, 6 figures, which is insanity.
Yeah,
But
that's
that
it is nuts.
that's happening out there. So, all right. So that covers digital, physical cards, WBC, which takes us right into, you mentioned a little earlier about the Phillies and spring
Spring
training. And
training. Baseball's
yep. So
here. It's all about
give us some
baseball
spring
today.
training thoughts heading into opening day next week.
Yeah, it's crazy. So here it is. Yeah, spring training is as pointless as any preseason sport could be. I think there's players fighting for 3 bench spots, but it's a great warm up, right? Baseball's here. It's all about baseball. There's other things going on. March Madness is here, and March is great for that tweener season. But yeah, it's all about where things are gonna settle. I think this is, not to jump too far ahead, but next year there's probably a lockout. There's probably a salary cap. There might even be a minimum floor. So I think we really need to maximize the most out of we can this year, not knowing what next year holds for baseball. So personally, it's let's see what does the Pirates do with the Skeens? Do they give them any support? Um, I like the underdogs. Obviously, I like my hometown team. They've become one of the problems of baseball and spending too much money. But God bless them for it. It's not my money, I guess. I shouldn't really complain too much. But
No, you know why we complain? Because there's consequences to everything. My Mets, you want to give Soto, you want to back the truck up, break the bank. He can't hit 9 times in one inning, right? Like
right,
so,
right,
and when you spend that much, it's going to come out of a pitcher, a starter, a reliever, somebody, right? So
yeah, yeah.
you need balance, not just break the bankers, right?
How do you build a team, right? How do you allocate your money? How do you build a team? It's like why we all want to. That's why we do fantasy sports, because we can be a GM and we can build little spreadsheets and we can see where to put all the money. Not doesn't all translates in the card, not all about cards and everything, but just playing GM, what are we going to do? And I think next year is a watershed moment for baseball. They're gonna try and put in a cap, but at the same time try to put in a floor. So you're gonna have
I
a
don't
minimum
think,
spend.
yeah, I don't think it's happening. And I listen a lot to, they were talking about it, and the MLB union back to the days of Marvin Miller in the 70s, and then they have a war chest right now. Where, to your point, they've been planning for 2 or 3 years that like we could sit out 2 or 3 years and keep you guys,
But if you're a
millionaires.
player, though, if you're a player, and let's just say you're at the tail end of your career, and there's only 6 teams that are approaching the salary cap or the tax threshold, I should say. All of a sudden, if you bring another 6 to 10 teams at the bottom and force them to spend another 20-30 million dollars, you can extend your career. You can go to Pittsburgh and be a DH. You can go to Minnesota and make pretty good money. And I don't like the word parity, but you can bring everybody up. So I think that it would be short-sighted for a player to say, "Well, I don't want a cap," because the floor is more important. There's 10 teams that don't spend any money.
Right. So there's a lot of ways to look at that. But yes, like football, where pretty much every given season you can go from, worst to first with a better possibility than baseball. Um, yes, because on a given year, the infield cost of the New York Yankees infield exceeds most small market teams,
Yeah,
right?
right,
And those
right.
teams, unless they've brought up, so many rookies that all gelled at once, are not going to compete. And even if they do, they're not going to have the money to pay them all in 3 to 5 years. And they're going to pull a Florida Marlins who wins a World
Exactly.
Series and the next year dumps everybody and is under
Yeah,
500, right?
yeah.
So, but back to the spring training, if we take a look at some of spring training surprises, it looks like we've had and I'm just bad with names, Carlos LaGrange, 102-mile-an-hour fastball. So what we're starting to see, and this has been going on for about 2 or 3 years, they are bringing up relievers that can just constantly throw over 100 miles an hour that have no aim, which is why people are getting hit more left and right. Like my Mets, like led the league 2 of the last 3 years of getting hit with balls. Now it's probably because half the teams don't like them, but
Yeah,
it's also
Alonso.
because
I mean,
half
you
these
could hit
pitches have
Alonso.
no aim anymore, and they just hit them, right?
It's like
So
Major League, it's the pitcher on Major League. So yeah, no control, but everybody will sign a 102-mile-an-hour guy. So, I I did go out. So I did go out and buy a box of Heritage baseball cards, to try and get back into it. There's some great cards in there. It's fun. It's more expensive than last year, but still, as far as a hobby box goes, the cheapest one out there. I'm not so sure that you make your money back on everything, but you have fun collecting. So I'm a series collector. If I buy one box or one hobby box, then I go and try to fill up the whole series and get the whole thing. So I'll, over the next couple of weeks, probably buy one or two more, maybe some blaster boxes. But Heritage is a fun product. It looks good, has a lot of inserts, has a lot of fun cards in it. So that for me is where I'm at with spring training. Maybe down the road I'll get Bowman, I'll get some of the other things, but right now I went out and bought a box of Heritage and had some fun opening it.
So it looks like Chase Lawton for Cleveland's batting 393 right now, vying for a starting right field job, despite minor league action. So it would be interesting to see where his card is and how the market moves. Is it truly like the stock market on any given day? It moves up or down based upon new info, good or bad, right? Like,
I
does
think it
spring
does.
training show where cards are increasing, decreasing on a day? Like what's the best site
Probably not. I
that
think
you
just like we
use?
said, spring training's a waste of time. So what it'll do is just like WBC, it'll give you some insight into players to track for the year. So some people, when they're collecting, they say, I'm going to try and pick the rookie of the year. So you could use a spring training to flush out that philosophy. You could say, all right, let me find 10 players I'm gonna pick, and track them and collect their card, and hopefully one of them hits on rookie of the year, and then all of a sudden you've got something worthwhile. That's the only effect I see spring training or the WBC doing, is just to give you more exposure to who insert your joke, who's on first, what's on second. I don't know who's on third, but he's having a good
Third
spring
base.
training, so we'll see what happens.
All right. So going into then, well, big blank there that I just drew. So going into the start of Major League Baseball next week, my Mets are hosting the Pirates, and obviously that means Skeens is game one.
Oh, there you go. So you're
So
0 and 1. You're
that's
starting
so
the year 0 and 1. That's
we
good.
should start 0-1,
That's
correct?
good.
Most likely 1-2 after a 3-game match there. And you Phillies are
We
phasing
have
who?
Texas Rangers coming all the way up from Arlington to Philadelphia. So Phillies actually have a Ranger. I don't know where Garcia, if he's starting in left field or not, but he'll be playing his old team. And like I said, we'll having the competitive juices in that WBC carry over to the locker room and carry over to the field. So the bats aren't cold. So
Hey, those Rangers, you know who they took from me? Well, who went there? My
big trade,
uh
right?
Nemo went there.
Yeah. Well, didn't you
Uh,
did you get Seager too? You had a big trade with them. Some
no,
locker room
we
changes.
lost Nemo to Texas and we didn't get Seager. We didn't get honestly, we have our GM is what's his name from Milwaukee, who built these weird Milwaukee teams. It's a little Billy Beanish like from Moneyball, where
Oh yeah, yeah,
he
yeah,
doesn't really just go after the studs for the money. He tries to build some wackadoo team. It worked for him in Milwaukee to a certain point, but it exploded in his face with the Mets last year when we couldn't have a starting pitcher go 4 innings for
yeah,
most of the year.
yeah, yeah. Right. So
And was sitting on one starting pitcher. Now, Peralta, who we got from Milwaukee, surprise,
oh,
surprise.
he's good.
And what do your Phillies starting five look like?
It's so they just came out with it. Sanchez is starting. Nola second. We did have Andrew Painter getting the 5th spot. So Painter made the team, and Wheeler starting on the DL. So Wheeler will come in later, but that's a decent one. Painter would be a guy that I would like to see, what his, not only his cards, but his career and where he goes. High draft pick, valuable player. Let's see where he goes. He's early in the contention for some good things happening.
Got it. So to wrap this up with cards that we should be on the lookout for, maybe having a good week with baseball starting.
Yeah, you
Anybody
can
that's
look
going
at
to
the
jump up?
Venezuelans, you can look at Acuna, you can look at everything. But again, I would just say have fun with it. Go do some homework, find out who you like. If you've got a favorite team, go get those guys. It gets you into the season. Go rip some cards and see what you can get, and then follow those players, and maybe you'll learn, some new guys on your team that are just coming off.
Well, I will go out and buy some, get myself some Italian baseball cards, and those two words have never gone together usually. And I
Exactly.
will, and I will close with this. It was nice for once to say, there's another hit by the Italians, and not be talking about a mob wipeout.
Yeah, always politically correct, Joe. Thanks very much. We'll end on that.
And we will end on that. I am Joe Rendacci,
Paul Gallagher.
and you guys have a good one.
See you.